So far in this series, we have focused on using palm oil for food, nutraceuticals, and pharmaceuticals, but these are just a few of the products that can be developed from the oil palm tree. There is also something called biomass, living material that is part of the oil palm tree that is not edible, but is nevertheless very valuable in a variety of ways. Biomass is a kind of new concept. Most of the byproducts of the oil palm tree were considered waste in the past and burned or discarded. Now everyone realizes that the biomass from the oil palm tree could be as valuable as the palm oil itself and a boon to the environment. Niels Madsen is an environmental activist working on the problem of air pollution in Southeast Asia.
Biomass is anything that comes from living material. And when living material grows, it absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. This decreases greenhouse gases. Then people say, well, it's released when it's burned. Yes, that's true. But when it's released, if it wasn't burnt, it would decay automatically and the same amount would be burnt.
It is estimated that there are 100 million tons of palm oil biomass in Malaysia, and that is either a gigantic waste or a gigantic opportunity.
The oil palm is producing 10 times more biomass compared to the oil that is being produced. So we have 10 times more in terms of tonnage, biomass sitting around, not utilized at the moment compared to palm oil. So this is our future gold mine.
Nanteng Ye is managing director of a Malaysian palm oil mill which has found a way to exploit that gold mine.
In the past, the biomass, the huge amount of biomass that is generated is being treated as a waste. Today, in this mill, we are also utilizing all this biomass. The biomass is being utilized in many different ways, from the empty fruit bunches. The empty fruit bunches are being used as a dry long fiber, which is in turn being used as a raw material for mattress making. The empty fruit bunches is also being converted into pellets, briquettes, which is basically used as a biofuel. The empty fruit bunches is also being combined with other biomass, as in like sludge, other fibers, into organic fertilizer, composting.
There is also a high value end to this potential biomass business, chemicals derived from the leaves and the trunk of the oil palm tree. Bas Melson is executive director of Malaysia's Agency for Innovation, and he says there are all kinds of high-end applications down the road for oil palm biomass.
I think the ultimate would be bio-based chemicals, specialty chemicals, succinic acids, lactic acids, polylactic acids, but also ethylene, butanol, and so on. So these are chemicals that could be derived from a lignocellulosic base, which is the leaves and the trunks of the trees. That's the ultimate, which is not yet commercially viable today at a commercial scale. Lab scale, yes, available. Pilot scale, starting. Commercial scale, not yet. Still about 5 years from now.
Creating sellable products from oil palm tree biomass is not easy, but it can be profitable. Joseph Lim is managing director of a Malaysian biomass startup called Global Green Synergy. He says most oil palm plantation owners have overlooked the biomass opportunity because they were making so much on the palm oil.
Most of the industry player, the oil palm industry player, they are thinking that this is not significant. The oil is more important. So they are not really interested in doing the conversion. But work together with AIM, the Agency Innovation Malaysia, we are very highly promote the turn the waste to wealth. Okay, and not only to wealth. What I mean about the wealth is not only the money, it's to the nation.
What's refreshing about Lim is he sees the biomass opportunity as a good business and good for the environment, or nature as he puts it. From the perspective of the palm oil plantation owners, the use of biomass is a boom, helping to grow the market for products created from the oil palm tree without having to use more land.
The biomass industry is the next phase of development for the palm oil industry. We don't have much more land for agriculture development. The 5 million hectares of land that we have set aside or dedicated for cultivating oil palm may be reaching the limit there. And so in order to continue to grow our revenue from the palm oil industry, we have to reinvest in finding the necessary technologies, green technologies, to exploit commercially the biomass that is produced by the oil palm.
It did take some creative thinking to realize that Malaysia was very rich in something it hadn't even considered, the byproducts of its agricultural industry.
And one of the areas that we looked at is where are we strong in already? Agricultural space, we're very strong. What do we have in abundance? It's biomass, it's the byproduct of our oil palm industry. And what can be done with this biomass and how can we utilize this? Since we are one of the largest producers of this product, how can we leverage it and use it as a foundation to actually benefit the country?
So in a country that's often accused of putting profit ahead of people and planet, it's really refreshing to meet a businessman like Joseph Lim, who is passionate about the environment.
The most important thing in the oil palm biomass is not towards only figure, not towards only money. You need to find out what is your passion. If your passion is into green, no matter you face a lot of problems, challenges, you can overcome. Things that people don't want to do, I do. Things that people refuse to use, I use. That's all.
But biomass is, in the end, a business. And it could be a very good business, both for investors and for the environment.
By 2020, this could contribute 30 billion ringgit in additional GNI to our economy, which would be a little bit less than 10 billion US dollars. And it would create an additional 66,000 jobs for Malaysians, about half of which would be high value jobs such as chemical engineers, plant managers, and so on. And we would reduce the carbon emissions of the country by 12%.
So the oil palm tree products can be used for food, for biodiesel, and for biomass. But wait, there's more. These days, a palm oil refinery can turn out all kinds of products. We met Nan Teng Ye before. He runs one of the most technologically advanced palm oil refineries in Malaysia. His palm oil mill and refinery specializes in the sustainable production of many different downstream products based on the oil palm tree.
The job of the palm oil mill is to extract crude palm oil from the fruits and palm kernels from the fruits. Along in the process, a huge amount of biomass will be generated. And this biomass today are being utilized to the fullest. And going forward from the crude palm oil is being sent to refineries. And the job of the refineries is basically to make this crude palm oil into edible products or industrial products.
The first task at the mill is to separate the oil palm tree's fruit, called the fruitlets, from the biomass.
Once we take the palm fruit, we have to cook it first. The process is called sterilization. In the sterilization, we have to inject steam into an enclosed chamber to cook the fruit. After the fruit has been cooked, the fruits are being thrown into a big drum, a rotating drum, and because of the rotational forces, the small little fruitlets are being separated from the bunch, and that is when you have empty fruit bunches and the fruitlets.
The next step is to use a centrifuge to separate out the various components of biomass, the fiber, the shell, and the kernel.
As for the fibers and the nuts, it will be further separated through a series of activities using air wing. The fiber is lighter, so the fiber will go to the top and the nuts will go to the bottom. Using water, we play with the density difference. The shell is heavier, shell goes to the bottom. The kernels is lighter, go to the top. So we use a series of the air and water density process to separate all these different products.
This oil palm mill and refinery has also been a leader in cleaning up what used to be a rather nasty business.
In the beginning, when I remember very clearly when the first palm oil mill that I visited 30 years ago, is that you can smell it first before you see it, right? You can smell, it's there, before you actually see the mill itself.
In the past, all the empty fruit bunches are being thrown essentially or incinerated and causing some air pollution. And today, instead of incinerating them or throwing them, we are turning them into useful products, into fuels, into raw material for mattress. So basically closing the loop. Nothing goes to waste.
The world will eventually run out of fossil fuels like gasoline to run our cars, our trucks, our factories, petroleum is not a sustainable product. Once you take it out of the ground and use it, it is gone forever. But vegetable-based fuels, like palm oil, for example, they are sustainable and renewable because they come from plants. You grow them and you can harvest them over and over again.
As the West tries to wean itself from fossil fuels and less than reliable suppliers of petroleum in the Middle East, the star on the horizon is biofuel, made from vegetable oils. And the most economical and efficient source for biodiesel is palm oil. The use of palm oil as fuel came about almost by accident. If you remember Caratino, the nutraceutical makers, they had to develop a new way to extract phytonutrients, carotenoids, from palm oil. Once they figured that out, they discovered the byproduct of that process was something called methyl ester, the main ingredient of biodiesel.
Now, in order to extract phytonutrients, you have to convert it into a different molecule. You have to go via a methyl ester route. And therefore, when you extract phytonutrients, methyl esters become a byproduct. And as you know, methyl ester today is a very popular biofuel, which is biodiesel.
The United Nations projects that the production of vegetable oils like palm oil for bioenergy will double in the next 10 years. But as with the use of palm oil in food products, the use of palm oil for biodiesel is also controversial. There have been efforts in Europe and in the United States to limit the use of palm oil for fuel.
It is a vicious cycle. First, a lot of fallacies were created associating palm with orangutan and habitat loss, deforestation. And then when the biofuel industry was about to grow, then there were fears that if palm oil is allowed to participate in the biofuel industry, then it will outcompete the soya and rapeseed, obviously, and this will trigger bigger need or imports of palm and bigger opening up of land for cultivating oil palm. So this fear was later on translated into all kinds of negative campaigns against palm oil.
The European Union requirements for a vegetable oil to qualify as biodiesel fuel is that it must show fuel savings compared to fossil fuel of at least 35%. The EU concluded that palm oil-based biodiesel did not meet that standard.
The EU did not practice transparency. They quickly formulate a figure called default figure for palm oil of 19% emission saving value compared to burning of fossil fuel. So if palm is only given a 19% saving value compared to petroleum diesel, and their law stipulates that the saving value must be 35% at the minimum, so they disqualify palm oil from participating automatically in their biofuel market.
As in the battle over using palm oil for food, the Malaysians claim that Europe is arbitrarily excluding palm oil to protect their own domestic products.
If they allow palm oil to freely flow in to be used as biofuel, obviously the rapeseed industry cannot survive and compete because they are probably 2 times as expensive. And normal business would not buy a product that is 2 times more expensive. So for that reason, I think they have devised all these protectionist measures in order to discourage importation or free use of palm oil in their biodiesel industry.
The palm oil business has run into similar problems in the United States, where the EPA standard for qualifying as biofuel is even higher than in Europe.
Oh, they had a very clever figure of 17%, which is way below their 20% to enter the biodiesel definition, and 50% to enter the minimum of 50% emission saving to be qualified as advanced biofuel raw material. So palm oil is disqualified on both levels of entry in the biodiesel raw material market.
The arguments sound all too familiar, whether we're talking about food or fuel. Despite the palm oil bans in Europe and the United States, the evidence seems to support the view that palm oil is a very efficient and sustainable crop for fuel.
We believe that biodiesel produced from palm in a sustainable way, and I emphasize the word sustainable because there is also so much talk about palm causing deforestation and clearing wildlife habitat and so on. But our company and responsible companies, and I dare say almost all companies in Malaysia and the Malaysian government in particular, we have very strict laws when it comes to sustainability. So well before all this hype about sustainability and wildlife habitat came, Malaysia has got stringent agricultural laws. We just can't go and clear a high conservation value forest to plant oil palm.
Again, the Malaysian view is that biofuel from palm oil is more eco-friendly than biofuel from competing oils like rapeseed and soybean.
Now, if you look at the statistics of how much biofuel can you produce per hectare of land, I mean, palm's figures are so striking. We produce more than 10 times that of soybean, for example, because our output per hectare is almost 10 times that of soybean oil, 4 times that of rapeseed oil. And if you look at the biodiesel market, it's predominantly rapeseed and soybean.
So despite the figures thrown out by the EPA and the EU, palm oil producers say their biofuel is better for the environment than competing biofuels from rapeseed and soybean oil, products that have been accepted as environmentally friendly.
Now, if that is justified, that biodiesel is sustainable and that it's good for the world because obviously it reduces the carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide emissions almost by 70%, which is a fact. Then if you factor in the fact that all of this has been done in a very sustainable way by not clearing forests, then the palm story is very compelling.
Now, there is one serious problem, though, with using palm oil for biodiesel, and that is temperature. Palm oil works fine in Southeast Asia and its hot climate, but palm oil-based diesel doesn't work so well in colder climates.
Because palm has a tendency to congeal at relatively low temperatures. So we developed another technology that can convert palm biodiesel into winter-grade fuel that can withstand temperatures as low as minus 15 or minus 21 degrees.
Obviously, palm oil-based biodiesel was not going to find a global market if it could only work in warm weather. So Caratino had to develop a way to keep the fuel flowing at colder temperatures.
We do realize that in colder climates it's a problem. So what we effectively do in this technology is we try to transform the original biodiesel's fatty acid composition using a proprietary technology to take away saturates and leave more mono and polyunsaturates in the methyl ester composition. That's how we bring down the CFPP down to 0 or minus 6, and we can do further improvements on it to take it down to minus 15 or minus 21.
That reference to CFPP stands for cold filter plugging point, the temperature at which biofuel would clog the car's fuel system. There is one more problem with palm oil-based biodiesel fuel, or any vegetable oil-based fuel, and that is cost. Because vegetable oil goes into two markets, food and fuel, the demand is high, and so the price is high.
Market forces for petroleum and vegetable oils are now linked. You really can't take the two away. Whenever petroleum prices move, simply because a good part of vegetable oil goes into biofuels, the vegetable oil prices also move in tandem. So it has so happened that the demand for vegetable oils vis-a-vis its production always keeps vegetable oil prices high.
Since market forces make biofuels more expensive, they only succeed right now where government intervenes with price support.
The usage of palm oil as a fuel is really something that can only happen if there's an amount of subsidy, if it is subsidized, all right? Because as long as the price of palm oil is high, right, then I think it is not going to be easy to use it for fuel.
So the world over, biodiesel incorporation into blends has always been by a government mandate. And it's always driven by policies. And different countries have different views about why they use biodiesel. Climate change is one argument, but there's also energy security. I mean, the West, particularly the US and the EU, has always been reliant on exports of fossil fuel from other parts of the world, which they don't think is very reliable, for the future.
One advantage biofuels have is that because governments want to encourage the use of non-fossil fuels, biofuels get a tax advantage.
Biodiesel has always traditionally been more expensive than diesel. But in countries like the EU, what they have is they have a very heavy tax imposed on fuels, fossil fuels. And therefore, when they take away that tax on biofuels, it makes it more competitive.
Bottom line, society has to decide whether clean air is worth the price.
Well, I think we all have to accept a higher price for energy. It's such a low, extra, marginal, higher price for getting clean energy. And I think we all should be prepared to do it. Now, bioenergy is more costly, but it has a tremendously positive impact because it creates jobs for people collecting it. It creates good local air, and then it also decreases the dependence on foreign imports for energy. You become locally sourced for energy. So I think that's a price worth paying for.
Despite the potential market for biodiesel, much of the focus on palm oil is still on the fruit and food applications. And one tends to forget that an oil palm tree is a tree. It's a source of wood. And some entrepreneurs here in Malaysia are finding that it's more profitable to process the wood from dead oil palm trees than to just burn it, what they used to do. As you've heard, in today's oil palm tree business, there is almost no waste. Virtually every part of the tree gets used for something useful, and timber is Exhibit A.
The palm trees, they will be actually chopping off no matter what, whether you would like to use it or not, because the recycle period is every 25 to 30 years. After this period, the estate will actually take it off because of the yield too low or the tree go too high. So no matter what, they will use it. So this is a byproduct from the oil palm plantations.
William Wong is Director of Marketing for a company called Palm Wood Technology, an innovative Malaysian company that has figured out how to use the wood from the oil palm tree and turn it into furniture. And they say customers like palm wood furniture because the wood is so stable.
Palm wood is a tropical timber, so a lot of the product that we sold over the years actually sold all over to the countries, all the world. We sold to like Europe, Australia, South Africa. It's actually one of the material very stable in terms of all kinds of weathers. You see, timber is a very live materials. When it's hot, it expands. When it's cold, it shrinks. So especially like countries like in US, they have 4 seasons. So this is a lot of people will be worrying if this timber can sustain the kind of extreme weathers or not. But palm is a very stable material.
It did take some high-tech R&D to figure out how to solve a problem no one had solved before in dealing with one of the unique characteristics of oil palm tree wood. The wood is not of a consistent density.
So you have to segregate the density in terms of the application. You have to know where exactly you are going to use it. If you know you're going to use for tabletop, you have to use a higher densities. If you know you're going to use it for infill, you can use a lower density.
Another potential problem with turning oil palm tree wood into furniture is its high moisture content.
But one thing about palm is actually it has a very high moisture content. This moisture content can be 5 or 6 times more than the conventional timber. Just give you examples, is like the normal timbers, like maybe in pine or spruce, it have the moisture contents around 60 to 70%, or maybe the most is up to 100. But palm, the density, the moisture contents can go up to 500 to 600%. So this is the part where we need to dry the timber to a usable levels. And this is a very difficult process.
But William Wong's company has figured out how to do all of this and do it profitably because they say using timber from oil palm trees is good for the environment.
What I look at it, it's very environmental friendly. It's very, we call it the healthy products because it's formaldehyde free. So it's also resistant to waters like the normal conventional furnitures. So if you spill water on it, it would not like swell like the MDF board, like the chipboards. It exactly works like the solid wood. So it's very good.
So what's the verdict on palm oil? Nature's blessing or nature's curse? Of course, it depends on whom you ask. There are still critics and NGOs who are trying very hard to stop the growth of the palm oil business, and to some degree they are succeeding. But the real threat to palm oil may not come from the environmentalists or the health advocates. It may come from the palm oil producers themselves. Malaysia is rich in palm oil and other natural resources, but some economists are concerned that Malaysia and Indonesia's near monopoly on palm oil may be coming to an end, and that they may soon be competing with new players like Thailand, Myanmar, and even China. So palm oil is a big business. It has raised the standard of living for people who just decades ago were poverty-stricken. They now send their children to college, they drive nice cars, and they are joining the ranks of the high-income class. It's not all due to palm oil, but that is the main product, the business, and the source of foreign exchange that is helping to move Malaysia from a former British colony to a developing country to its goal of being a Tier 1 world-class economy by the year 2020. So to answer the question, palm oil, nature's blessing or nature's curse, all the people of Malaysia want is for us to look at the facts. One of the top women in Malaysia, Dr. Wong Lai Sum, sums it up this way.
I do wish with all my heart that people will look at the facts of the case and decide for themselves. That's the most important thing.
I'm Stuart Chaffee, reporting from Malaysia.